Thank you so much, and thank you very much for inviting us here and giving us the opportunity to discuss this extremely engaging and as the topic suggests, futuristic topic in relation to an area which, for the longest time, we've only been perhaps reading and dreaming about, but now it is turning out into a reality. And if it is to be turning out into reality, there are various aspects of it that need attention, that need detailing, and that need information to be spread to as many people as possible. So, this session we will be trying to address two or three aspects, and some of those have been highlighted, brilliantly by Dr. Somnath in the presentation. I was just going through all the slides that Dr. Somnath was putting up, and I felt that if we really need to go in depth into some of the aspects that he highlighted, we will need an entire day, because there are so many things that are happening specifically in the last 3 to 4 years that have made this area, commercial space, an extremely interesting place to be in, be a part of, and look to investing in, not just from the point of view of developing the commercial environment, but also to add to the overall national capital for this industry in the country, and then subsequently, of course, contribute to the world. So, we will be discussing the aspects of course, one of the biggest challenges is always, how do you find finance? How do you find investment for this particular opportunity to really develop into reality? We'll be discussing that. We'll be discussing aspects of the fact that we are here as part of Invest Karnataka, and Bangalore, as was highlighted by Dr. Somnath, has been one of the places where I could say places of birth for the entire space program for the country. So how does Bangalore and Karnataka fit in to the entire scheme of things, and some of the burning issues that are impacting not just the national ecosystem, but how things are happening across the world. So, how we're going to do this is, I'm going to just be directing specific questions to the members of this panel, and towards the end, we will open it up to specific questions from the audience. Dr. Somnath, I just wanted to, I know it's been the budget in 2025 concentrated a lot on the national mission with regard to geospatial data. Now, the announcement, specifically as it comes in conjunction with the budget, assumes a lot of significance. If you could please tell us something about that, and what are the repercussions of that from a commercial space aspect?
No, as already been told, the space-based data is very, very important as far as we know the conversion of whatever investment that we make in space into monetization. For example, the data that we have been collecting in the past, especially the EO data, is huge. The change detection approaches is and systematic study of it can yield huge amount of information. In the past, the government has been investing money to create this type of knowledge as far as the government functioning was concerned. So we were interacting with the ministries, departments to make use of it. For example, the entire groundwater prospecting of this country is now possible using the satellite-based data. And that database is such a good data. You look at the cartographic information in terms of the entire data in terms of high resolution is available. The digital elevation map of this country is available. The arid areas, the forest area, the demarcations, the water bodies, the rivers, its water variation annual means. This information has so much of value. But this all resides only within the government in terms of decision makers, in terms of the knowledge it is there. But then how do you really make use of it to create some value? And this has been shown successfully by some of the startups. In how you really help in terms of banks to do the lending services, making use of the intelligence that you can gather from the data over many years. For example, agricultural data in land, you can see whether it has been productive over the last so many years and whether it is worth investing in this to create more value. So, and similar exercise can be done in many, many areas. So, EO data becoming more democratic and available and putting more satellites to create it, it becomes very important. And if you look at the models in Europe and US, the same examples are seen. For example, Sentinel, the Copernicus has shown that the value it can generate is really high, though the investment is mostly governmental. So the government looks at how this data to be generated out of the governmental investment, but its monetization will happen in the public by the businesses and will not be charged also. So this geospatial policy allows it to be sold really free. So the free access of the data becomes an important element. Earlier, many people have tried on how to sell it at a cost. I think this model did not work very well. And more than that, there are other elements to it. For example, it's not just the resources that we are looking at. It has also strategic element in it. For example, observation is so crucial for national security. So there is also an investment coming on account of that aspect as well. For example, another element is in terms of the economy. The mineral prospecting, the forest reserves, the disaster mitigation. I think all of this requires the oceans, the sea coast. I think all of this requires EO data, which is primarily to be analyzed and used. So I believe today, this area, there is a huge potential still not explored by Indian business houses. How do you really convert this data into some possibilities? One of them which I would like to tell you today is, for example, the fisheries. There is a data which is coming from the oceans. Oceansat, the scatterometers, this data is actually converted to create something called the fish advisory for fishermen to go and catch fish. But it is not commercially exploited. This data is available and sometimes it is used, sometimes not used. But this is a huge data that can be used by somebody who has an interest in converting this data into a commercial product and then sell it to fishermen community, the boat owners, the fishing community, and then make a income out of it. If they are able to catch good fish, of course, they will be happy to share with you that type of who is the information provider can get benefited. So we need to look at how to convert all of these governmental owned programs into a commercial space.
I think very interesting. And one other example that perhaps I may be able to add to it, and you mentioned, for example, agriculture, and what the yield has been of a particular area, and how that yield has changed over a period of time, and what impact that is likely to make in terms of crop or crop rotation, etc. That's huge potential, not just from a social sort of impact standpoint, but also maybe to just adjust government policies towards how it should look at perhaps, if there are, for example, we keep hearing about these instances of farmers taking loans, farmers suicide, etc. So how that can perhaps be impacted. And secondly, how the same data could potentially then be also sold to insurance companies who can look at it from that point of view.
Recently the Agriculture Ministry has announced a program, Yes Tech program, which is specifically on this topic. How do you really look at agricultural insurance based on space-based data? And ISRO, along with the state governments and private companies, have joined hands together now, and that is already rolled out. It's reasonably successful in some of the states.
Well, thank you so much for that. Mr. Suterwala, just, if you were to really identify in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, a handful of, 2, 3, 4 areas where real disruption can take place. Because I think in any new and emerging area, there will be, of course, people who are existing players who've already established their position, specifically in this area of commercial space. India, because of the fact that we've only entered into it recently on a commercial scale, and there too, primarily in the case of startups, disruption is going to be very important for us to really make our presence felt. So if you are to identify a certain few areas where you think the disruption is likely to take place, what would your take be?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting because you're using disruption, I think, in a positive context. And so I've been here kind of wrapping up my trip, started off first 2 days at Aero India, met with companies, met with a bunch of startups today through Mach 33. And what kind of surprised me, and I don't know why it surprised me, is just the sheer amount of inherent talent that resides in India, and specifically in Bangalore. I'm talking about the engineers. I met with companies that are developing very novel capabilities, things, thinking about doing space-based analysis to kind of lower the amount of data that comes back to terrestrial stations, and these are young folks, and these are companies that are establishing themselves. I think one specific area, I don't know if I can name 4 or 5, but one area where I feel like India will find success and already kind of has is in developing SSA capabilities, space situational or space domain awareness data. The chairman talked about data and how that data can be used and how it is available. In the U.S., Spacecom has this website, spacetrack.org. It's available for anyone. You sign up, there's an agreement, and it's data that you get for free. Governments can sign up through the JCO, the Joint Commercial Operations Cell, and academia and all these other organizations can come and take this data and leverage it for their own use and then provide products back, and they can even sell that data. So why I mention India specifically, because there's been several companies that have startup companies that have successfully bidded on U.S. contracts through U.S. Space Force and have been awarded contracts. Digantara comes to mind. I think Pixel has a contract as well. Again, there's a few, there's not that many, but I think it is showing that there's a desire in the U.S. to buy this data, and India can be a great provider of SSA data, for example. Another area is SATCOM. There's a huge desire to gain SATCOM capability, not just by the U.S. military, but globally, other countries, and specifically India. PNT, developing technology and concepts to prevent adversaries from doing spoofing, is again another area, a niche area where I feel India, amongst very few countries, have excelled because they've built their indigenous capability through, I believe it's called NAVCENT, the indigenous PNT capability. There's only a handful of countries that have been able to do that. For India to expand that PNT, of course, there's going to be reliability. There's going to be reliability on commercial. Again, I can speak to the model that the U.S. government, primarily through Spacecom, use. Our dependence on commercial and the commercial space industry cannot be overstated. The U.S. government, for example, does not do launch. Again, another area where I think Indian companies, and I met with a few, one specifically that's developing the propulsion system for a medium lift rocket, something that is not that available. And there's limitations on how much, with the existing capabilities there, how much launch capacity is there. So when we build up our industry, we recognize that there is a dependence for the U.S. warfighter in the space domain to have on commercial industry. Our government poured money into this industry to support it, to grow it. Probably a decade ago, we maybe had a few hundred companies. Now today, we have more than 5,000 commercial companies providing, a range of services to the U.S. military.
Thanks. And that's great input. And I think some of the messaging that is going out to this audience perhaps will try and get some of them who've already been working in some of these in a manner positive disruption sort of area, and to really get the space ecosystem and the commercial space ecosystem in India moving in that direction. Jay, I had a question for you. Towards the end of Dr. Somnath's presentation, there was a reference to technology transfer and the capability that ISRO has and the potential for people to tap into that huge research capability and existing sort of models and existing products that are available. I wanted to ask you, given how India's technology transfer framework sort of is working, what's the message that goes out into the international market of how we are placed vis-a-vis technology transfer? And if you were to really sort of mention areas of improvement where this could be, we could really harness that capability a little better, what would those be?
Great, thank you. First, I want to thank Invest Karnataka for having me here to talk today about commercial space. Particularly, it's a topic that I'm tremendously passionate about. And I've been involved in this area in over a decade. We met maybe 15 years ago. And just kind of think about where we are today from where we began. And I think we just need to recognize that India is on a tremendous journey here. And we've seen changes in the way India not only thinks about in leadership, about tapping commercial capabilities for the benefit of not only civil and military space, but for the general benefit of the economy. We've seen wholesale changes in FDI policy, in how the government is organized, how they regulate the sector, how they think about entrepreneurs, how they think about startups, and as how they think about leaders that are envisioning the really tremendous and true potential of what commercial space brings to the table. And so when you talk about tech transfer, I think about it in a slightly different way. India's competitive edge has always been technology, whether it's IT or engineering, hard or soft. It is where India excels. There are people and talent here that are literally unrivaled, not only individually, but collectively and at scale and at competitive costs that you just cannot find anywhere in the world. So if you think about whether it's making semiconductors or software or space applications or hardware, Indian technology is going to lead. And ISRO has tremendous technology that it's transferred to the private sector. And the private sector has incredible ideas that they've been able to not only leverage existing, but build on to kind of think about what is the art of the possibility. So it's not about tech transfer, it's about what you actually do with that. The commercial world has certain capabilities and processes and cost efficiencies that governments will never really be able to do. But smart governments tap those capabilities. And we see that in India, and we've certainly seen that in the United States with a commercial space enterprise that's 30 years old now, whether it's imaging data, whether it's commercial weather data, whether it's NASA commercial missions. And India is starting that journey and starting really strong and really moving fast. So when we take tech transfer, you have the technology. The critical element here is what do you do with it? If we talk about commercial space as just purely government contracting to commercial entities, we are underestimating the real potential of what commercial space looks like. Commercial space could and should be how do visionaries think about tapping private and public markets for the benefit of whether it's the benefit of a company or society to do really revolutionary things. And so the tech transfer that's coming out now has to be rethought, rebuilt for truly commercial markets. And that's where India is just first starting its second phase of this commercial journey. And we'll get into that more. But I think the tech transfer is only a small piece of it. It's really what do you do? What are the markets? What are the ecosystems? What are the applications that in the end drive value? And value, again, attracts usage and money and investment and all of that. So.
Thanks so much, Ajay. And I think that's extremely important that technology is available. The technology transfer is taking place. In fact, there are guidelines that have been issued for how that is to take place. And perhaps, as Dr. Somanath said, maybe a greater amount of information needs to be spread to the people who are interested in doing this as to how they should go about it, they should talk to, how they should access it, and most importantly, what ultimate use they're going to put to it. So I think...
I'll add something here. Recently, we conducted a workshop for automobile industries to come connected to ISRO and seek which are the technologies that are available in space that can be used in automobile technologies. So similar.
Absolutely, and I think as with smart cars and aspects thereof, there are certainly straight away those use cases are fairly apparent, and I think that I hope that develops into a more engaging and lasting conversation with some actual benefits being accrued to the automobile industry. Moving on, so we've underscored the importance of this sector and the importance that is being accorded to it by the government of India by the fact that, there is, we've had 3 or 4 policies in the last 2 or 3 years. We've had the FDI, sector opening up, which was released in February of last year and finally by notification in April in 2024. We've had various entities submitting applications to be permitted to invest through that particular route, and that process is ongoing. What's the next step? Yes, the policy framework is there. Yes, the regulations are permitting investments to thrive, not just local investment, but foreign invest as well. But now it's the question of where we get the money from. Well, the first answer again came from the government, where a 1,000 crore venture capital fund has been set up to essentially assist and allow for pre-seed and in early seed capital investment for space startups in the country. So I think there was, of course, a huge announcement around it. There was some amount of literature that circulated, but we'd like to hear from Dr. Somanath some more salient features of that to be able to, how one can really tap into that, and what's the agenda, how does one go about fulfilling that particular promise?
There were many schemes. One of them is the 1,000 crore VC fund. And the purpose of this is not really to fund any company in terms of their full demand of money. It's only to give a confidence to the investors to show that this particular company has been seen by space professionals and found a great utility in it. So it gives confidence for additional investments to come in. I think that's the primary goal of the VC funding. And the VC funding is now going to be operated by a fund operator, professional fund operator, which will be announced soon, and the norms of selecting and supporting such will be released soon. So that's the next step. It's still not made operational. I think that has to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an AIF under the SEBI rules, etc.
Yes,
that's how it's
yes,
going to be set up. Yes.
So then another 2 initiatives that we have taken recently is to create a fund for helping startups and companies to scale up their technology from TRL 3-4 level to 8-9 level. So this funding is also given as a grant now, and this is already government approval process is already getting completed. Up to 25 crore can be given for technology upgradation alone with no commercial goals identified. Some industry wants to take up that particular job, they can identify a TRL 3-4 technology and then invest this much of money to take it to 8-9. And then if it is successful for induction into a commercial program and you get a return out of it, then you need to pay back. If you are not successful, don't pay back. Now, this type of announcement is already there. For almost 500 crore has been identified for it. And another step is to create space parks or space in support cells across various states. And this funding could be as much as 100 crore per state, where you can establish facilities for startups and companies where they find high value investments for testing and validation. You don't find facilities, for example, vibration, environmental testing, space scale, qualification. Such facilities will be created by department, and this facility will be under the state government's control in some space park. Suppose the state government identified a space park location where there are many companies, such a facility will be created on government cost and will be run on a commercial basis. So such initiatives are taken primarily to help startups and companies to come in.
This would be akin to the STPI, the software technology parks. Will it be similar?
No, here the goal of setting up the space park lies with the role of space park setting with the state governments only, and it's not by the central government. In that space park, in space, ISRO will jointly set up a facility which will be funded by the government of India.